I'm curious, just with everything from creating the product to the bottling to the distribution to building the brand, all this stuff. What was the most challenging part?
I think along the way, it's funny. I mean, I have a timeline that I've gone through with the team, especially new team members, where I'll look at situations, I'll set goals, right? And then you go and you achieve that. A Starbucks was one of those where I thought one day they're gonna have something else besides coffee in here. We're gonna get in these cases and we're gonna have hint in there. And I eventually achieved those goals. But I think when those goals happen, even if you are successful, even if you feel like you know what success is for the other side of the table in a situation, sometimes things come up and they just explode, right? That you get, in this case, we got kicked out of Starbucks. We had like a year and a half of traction in there and we were doing great and everything was awesome. And then it wasn't. And I think that when you get in a situation where that happens and it happens to you enough, that's when you sit there and think about, well, what could I have done? And I think the question and the answer to that is that you have options. Because when you don't have, lots of clients, when you don't have lots of competitors to Starbucks, when you're putting all your eggs in one basket, then you those surprises end up being detrimental to the life of your company, right? And so I think that that's kind of the key thing that I've learned along the way, is that always have options, because when you don't have options, that's when you feel like, you're they've got you by the throat, right? And then you make bad decisions because you've got to stay alive, right? And I think, like, no one ever wants to be in those situations, but I think it's always important to be thinking about, you know, how do I how do I diversify in every how do I not have all my distribution in Google, even though it's an incredible place to be and place to start? How do I go find more of those? And I think just always be on your toes finding those. I'm sure in your business too, right? You're, especially when everything is great, you just think like, okay, I'm going to kick back. And I mean, do you feel that way as well?
It's interesting because at our recent conference, I shared kind of the story of CRISP and all the lessons learned. And what was interesting to me as I was reflecting on that when we were creating the presentation, at least in my case, I found that after every great thing that had happened, after every kind of, I guess, leap that the business had made, on the other side of that was some huge bit of adversity that I did not even know was waiting for me. And then the cycle would repeat. Like, so basically something amazing would happen. I'd feel that every problem was solved right before a massive problem larger than anything I could have imagined was looming. And then we'd solve that problem. And then I'd think, okay, we're getting the hang of this. And then another massive problem. And it's literally that year after year after year after year. Things that, at first blindsided me. Now I've come to expect them. It sounds like you've had a similar journey in the sense that after every great thing, so like in the example of Starbucks, you get like distribution and all these Starbucks. And then I guess what Howard Schultz decides they want to add food to the Starbucks offerings, right? They need to fill up, free up some refrigeration real estate, right? So then they pull Hint. But things like that, I'm just curious, what are those days like for you? And then how do you bounce back from them?
I think it's always looking at that they don't stay bad for very long. And it sounds like you've had those situations too, where, it really is a cycle. And that's what it's so great to be able to go back and share those stories too. Because I think oftentimes I think there's still a lot of people out there that don't want to talk about, their challenges or their failures. And I think that if you can actually be, upfront about those, first of all, I think opening up is kind of your own therapy session, right? Where you talk about it and it's definitely got some challenges. People are going to learn from them. They'll ask you questions that maybe you haven't been maybe a lot of times you have been asked, but other times you haven't been asked along the way. But I think the key thing is to know that dark days don't last forever, right? And that you have to be open to what's coming next. And I think in so many situations, I maybe I could say that I didn't see it coming, to your point, where you feel blindsided or whatever. But often I don't see the light coming, right? And I know that the light is even brighter because I had a dark moment, right? And I'm such a huge believer in that. And it's, when you think about it, it's very exciting. And I think that that's what you have to believe. But instead, if you just sit and you think, I'm a failure, I've always got challenges, my life, sucks, whatever, then I don't think you're open to the new things. I think you've got to, you've got to open yourself up and know that there's things that are coming around the corner. You've got to, wake up every morning and think about, okay, what are the things that I want to go accomplish that maybe I, didn't know that I had time to do, or hadn't really, blue sky things like a lot. And the more you do that, the more you're going to find your good, your light.